I want to talk to you about is the JFK files. And one of the things that you said was that if they showed you what they showed me, this was your quote, you wouldn't want people to know it either.
So I
Welcome to Pegasus vs. the World, where we take on challenges, comedy, trending topics, and some travel. City boy, city boy. All right, you guys, we got to talk about it. So Joe Rogan had Donald Trump on his podcast, and it's breaking the internet. Now, I promise this channel isn't going to become a political channel. We're not going to be reacting to a bunch of political things. But when something big happens, you know, like an assassination attempt, like this type of thing, in my opinion, it's worth talking about. And this is definitely a trending topic. Now, the first thing you see on the interwebs is people saying they're already suppressing this interview. And last time I checked, it was all at like 10 million views or something. Like, and I was like, and what happens is when you have on YouTube, at least, YouTube, when you drop something and it's hot, they make sure it's calculated. And so like when you have, it's called a 1 out of 10 video, they calculate the views a little just to make sure it's not bots and all this other stuff. So it takes a little bit of time for it to come in. However, what I was going to say is when I saw it was at 10 million, I'm like, dude, this is getting 1 million views an hour. Is it really being suppressed? And if it is, then that's crazy how many people, like, you know what I'm saying? So anyways, that's just, you know, whatever. But I thought there were some interesting takeaways here. Now, I'm not going to play these clips because if I can be absolutely honest with you guys, and this is coming from someone who's voting for Trump, but I'm not like a MAGA person. I'm not a Trumper. I just feel like he's the better option, right? I felt like he rambled a lot in this. He calls it the weave and da-da-da-da, but when you've heard him speak or seen enough, like you hear a lot of the same things over and over again. I was hoping that Joe Rogan would get a little more out of him in a sense, but I think Trump is really good at just, you know, I feel like he has a little bit of a wall up. I felt like his best interview so far was on Flagrant with Adam Schultz, because that actually, like, I don't know, the laughing, the this, that, and the other. I just was like, oh, man, this is a cool interview. Like, it really flowed. It was perfect. This one was a little interesting, and I don't know if it was because the former president had so much pressure because he knows how big JRE is and how many people it's going to reach. I don't know, but he did ramble, and that's just the truth. And again, I say that because this is someone who is voting for Trump, so all the Trump MAGA people don't go crazy. I'm just keeping it real. There were some things that we'll talk about it right now. Let's just get it started. The good, the bad, the ugly of this Joe Rogan podcast. And you guys can let me know in the comments what you think. Before we start, I do have a music reaction channel where I try to just focus on the music over there. It's at Black Pegasus Raps. I'll link it in the description. I try not to get political over there. Just have fun with music and do quirky stuff. Also, we started the 40-year-old FUQ Boys podcast. Over there, we cover more trending topics. We will definitely tackle politics, controversies, blah, blah, blah. So if you want to check that out, link in the description, and let's just get this going. Like, share, comment, subscribe. So I think the first thing I would criticize Donald Trump on this interview is not having direct answers for things that I thought were important. Now, the reason I've chosen to vote for Trump over Kamala Harris is simply because economy, I do think we would have a better economy under him. I mean, if he wins, we'll see if I was wrong. I have no problem publicly being like, damn, I effed up, you know. But I do think essentially, and I'll get back into this as we talk about this podcast, economy, immigration, and outside wars. That's what the main reason why I'm voting for Donald Trump. And I think those are the most important things. Economy affects every single American in this country and our development, and it even affects other countries. immigration affects the economy and in certain ways, and there's a bunch of different things. Like, so immigration is good. Like having immigrants here and having certain skilled people to work the fields and do certain things is good, but the proper way. Right now we're doing it improperly, and we're seeing a lot of stress and fracturing on the U.S. system. And then wars affect everybody. And the fact that, you know, we have nuclear capabilities, I personally would prefer someone who tried to go in and negotiate deals to get the wars ended. And I just feel like he's stronger. He's stronger than Biden and Harris, in my opinion. Even the way he acts, you know, how the thing people dislike about him the most is his bombasticness. And I think that's a strength in negotiation. So I personally gravitate to that. All right. Now, he wasn't, what was it? There was a couple of questions that he had that he didn't answer directly. And I was like, bruh, oh, the national spending. The national spending. Joe Rogan was like, yo, what's up with this, man? You know? And he kind of dodged the question in the sense of, he said, we were rocking and rolling. Then 2020, Rona happened. I try to dodge the C word, so we're just going to say Rona happened. And I was like, yeah, man, can you explain this a little more in detail? Because that is one of the things, if I'm voting on economic principles, right? And, you know, our debts is out of control. The spending is out of control. You're kind of just like, you know what I mean? But he didn't have a direct answer for me, which I would like to hear a little more direct and like concisiveness on why he did that. Or, hey, we brought the spending up because our plan was to do this and then it would neutralize it. He wasn't very specific. Okay. So that's my take there. Then nuclear, he was pressing him on, because they're talking about green energy versus fossil fuel. He's like a oil is gold guy. I think JRE is a little in the middle, but he's like, yo, I've been talking to scientists and physicists or whatever the hell, and nuclear energy is the wave, and we should take advantage of that. And Trump didn't really have an answer for that. It wasn't a direct answer. He was like, oh, it can be, he kind of sits on the side that it can still be dangerous because I believe nuclear weapons, blah, 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 blah. So, okay, those are a couple things that he didn't answer the questions directly, kind of danced around it. And I was just like, meh, I would have liked, you're on JRE. Give me the direct, detailed, concise answer. But that didn't happen. But he did have a take that I didn't know originally that I really did like, and it was cool to hear. He said originally, so they were talking about him being a former Democrat going to Republican, but he said he was going to run as an independent. It's like, originally I was just going to run as an independent. But as I was looking at the way it's a two-party system, Congress and Senate broken up in these two parties, he's like, as an independent, it's a lot harder to get both parties to rock with you versus just picking a side. And I was like, yo, you know, in Colorado Springs, our mayor is independent, right? And I think there's a shifting of the guard, because if I did anything, I would be more of an independent voter. But when you see certain things, it's like in this one, I have to choose because it's like extreme polar opposites. And, you know, if Kamala gets in, which there is a chance she gets in, optically and everything, you think it looks like Trump has all the momentum. He's going to win. But you saw how 2020 went. And I'm not going to get into depths of that on YouTube. But Kamala could win. And if she wins, I don't think it's the end of the country, the way people are selling it, because that's how Trump, if she ends, I think it could be a dark time. I think times aren't going to get better under Kamala Harris. I don't. And if they seem okay and we ride through it, I feel like some of the ideas that are being expressed in a Kamala presidency will lead to a harder time down the road. But I mean, again, I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't believe in selling doom and gloom. And I don't believe politicians are our savior. Like, you got to get out in the work and innovate, adapt, and become financially free, and then move and shake. That's just the only way you're going to save yourself from this mess. There's always been people in charge, leaders, dictators, monarchs, presidents, governments. That's just, you know. So anyways, now I'm rambling. Now I'm doing the weave. But yeah, so I liked what his take on the two-party system. And I was like, and him and Rogan kind of talked about like, yo, it'd be nice to spread it out. But he was like, if you're playing the game, you play to win. And he didn't say it like that, but you know, that's what I was taking from it. And hearing that he actually considered being an independent. I personally thought that was kind of dope. And it also represents the new time. This election is showing a change in the guard in history. Mainstream media can't keep up with podcasts. This is why Kamala's doing podcasts, because Trump is really doing. See, as much as people hate Trump, he is doing something different and calling out the fake news and all these establishment things, even though he might be a part of the establishment at some capacity. Like, he is an outsider, but he's a billionaire, so he's an insider. Like, there's a lot there, but he's doing a lot of good for waking people up, like what you would call a normie. And I think that's good overall. So I thought he had great humor too, because he said this joke where he was like talking about going to a fight. There's a big fight in November. And he's like, oh, that's coming up. He's like, well, next time you see me, I'll either be at the fight as the president or I'll be at home watching the fight depressed. And I was just like, people like that, they're the type that can dish it out, but they can take it too. And that, if you're going to dish it out, just be able to take it. And some of that self-deprecation, just messing around, I thought that was dope. Thought it was unique to how this interview came about, because originally Joe Rogan was like, I'll never have Donald Trump on my platform, blah, blah, blah. Right. This was maybe a year ago or so. And he had Bernie Sanders on his platform. Then he had RFK Jr. And in this, they started talking, and Rogan was like, look, it's about timing. And Rogan didn't specify, what do you mean timing? Or, you know, what timing? I get it, because marketing, attention is about timing. But I thought it was unique. Perfect timing for Trump to be on there. Perfect timing, right? We're a week and a half away from the election. But I wondered, what was the change? Now, Trump has aligned himself with a lot of people that Joe Rogan like. Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, and Elon Musk. Like, Joe Rogan praises these people. And so it is interesting seeing a shift there. So anyways, that's a little bit of a ramble, but I did think it was interesting how this came about, because Joe Rogan was at a point where he's like, he'd never be on my platform. And because of that, I remember Trump coming out, you know how Trump is. He's just spitting darts. You know, Ron DeSanctimonious. Now he's like, Ron's a great competitor. Like, that's Trump, man, he's interesting, but I like it because it's like a battle rapper. And I think on that big stage right now, we need someone dirty with it, because the big stage is nasty, and I'm talking about the world stage. You know what was crazy about this interview? Because of a lot of the rambling and the places it went, it wasn't as interesting as normal Joe Rogan podcasts. There's a Rogan podcast, the actual episode before this one with Sam Tripoli. And Rogan and Sam Tripoli go into the martial law bill that I think just got passed. I don't know. I got to go rewatch it. It was so interesting and deep, and their conversation went to all these really interesting places. I got a little bored on this, if I'm just being absolute. I got a little bored with this podcast. A lot of the same talking points that I've heard. Again, the Andrew Schulz Flagrant interview was the best because it showed more of his human side, and I felt like he let his guard down and kind of went for it. And on this one, he didn't. What else do we got here? Let me think. It was a good convo. Oh, they had a really good convo about health, and they brought up RFK Jr. and the health of America. This is where Trump was actually prepared, and this might be something that I'm also aligning. So my main thing, I said economy, immigration, wars, but health. I'm a health nut and a health advocate. And he brought out a chart on the podcast. You guys go check out the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, whatever. But he brought out a chart and was showing and talking with Rogan how unhealthy America is. And considering we're one of the wealthiest countries in the world, what does that tell us? Also, what does it tell us about our environment, our medical system, a bunch of things? It says a lot of inflammatory things are going on in our country, and no one wants to address it. And they did talk about certain chemicals and foods being illegal in other countries, but they're legal here, blah, blah, blah. That was a fantastic part of the conversation. I wish that would have went a little deeper. I saw one part that I could see the media spinning because they try to say Trump is in cognitive decline. No one talks for 3 hours that well who's in cognitive decline. But there was a moment where Rogan was like, didn't you play golf after your assassination attempt? And Trump starts telling the story of that YouTube video where he plays that game with a golf game with the pro golfer. And then he's like, I don't remember if I played after or before the assassination. Now that's going to be spun like, oh, he's cognitive health. His health is in decline. That's what I see them saying. But me, I'm 44 years old and I forget little details. Sometimes I got to be reminded and stuff like that. So I'm just like, dude, people forget stuff all the time. And if you don't expect a president, let alone an older president, to forget, something minuscule. Now it is minuscule, but sometimes y'all see me reaching for words where I'm like, I can't remember the words, and I'm doing all this stuff to build up my mental health because I definitely, my mind changed after I got the Rona in 2020. Like I've had like brain fog and stuff like that. So it's just something you work through. But I could see the mainstream media really grabbing that moment and trying to flip it. You guys let me know if you see that happen. It might not, but typically any little weakness he shows, they'll flip. And then we started this with what we're going to end it with. All right. Joe Rogan kind of pressed Trump on the JFK files. And again, I didn't like the answer. It reminded me of what I said with the national debt and nuclear. He kind of danced around the answer. It wasn't super direct. He's like, why didn't you open them? And a long story short, he was basically implying that some people advised him not to, and it would hurt certain people who are still alive within the files. But now he's saying he is going to open them damn near immediately if he wins. And I'm like, that's cool. I don't care about that. Like I said, I told you guys my points: economy, immigration, frickin' war, and health. Cool. I like what you're talking about. I don't like what they're talking about. I'm a rock with you. Take part in this, place that I pay taxes in. But yeah, the JFK thing, that's interesting because with what he said, if he doesn't open them, that's big brownie points taken away. Because when I look at some of the things people say, they just got to stop saying shit that they're not going to do, or at least have a very good explanation on why it doesn't get done. They also started talking about aliens, but I'm going to end it here because I think that's enough to kind of go off of. But again, the whole JFK files, the drain the swamp stuff, it's like he literally went on here and said why he could not, whatever prosecute or whatever Hillary. He's like, I could have done that, which I don't even know if he really could have. I don't know the law well enough or the government structure well enough, but he's like, I could have went after Hillary, but what does that look like? A former president's wife and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, bro, when you say stuff like drain the swamp, it don't matter who it is, right? That's my opinion. And I think a lot of these people who follow under the populist umbrella of MAGA feel that way. Now me, I'm just a simple man. I just think if you do the crime, you should do the time. And some of the stuff that I've seen, people do is just interesting. You see people getting locked up on the streets for less than what these politicians do all over the world. So I think accountability should be had. Do I think they have to make complex decisions to keep America at the number one spot? Yeah. And that's where I think it gets tough because me being a competitor and an athlete, I want to be number one. I want to win. And I rather see the American people win than lose. And sometimes that takes sacrifice and there's collateral damage that people don't want to admit to. And that's just the fact. Like all of us have benefited from being Americans. Like we just do. We're in a dope country. It's not war torn. And if you look at the history, these things, we should be happy and proud that like, yo, damn, I was able to live this life, so how do you pay it forward? But also it's just like, well, shit, man, this is just the way the game goes. But then trying to find some balance because at the same time, we're at such a good place. Like there's prosperity. There's more abundance on the planet than there ever has been in the history of the world. So it's like, can we start trying to, even things out a little bit? Do we always have to be at war, etc.? These are things that go on in my brain. Joe Rogan and Donald Trump break the internet with a podcast, which is crazy. I mean, let's keep it real. Donald Trump is doing things that have never been done before, and I tip my hat to him for that. Again, I'm not one of these people that believes they're going to, I think if Trump wins, we could get a little breathing room for a little while. That's it. And that's just in the areas I think. And I'm actually man enough and willing enough to say I could be wrong. The economy could go to shit under Trump. I can't imagine him not getting the borders under control, so I have no doubts there. And he might not get us out of these wars. Like, we don't need to be in Ukraine, bro. They need to figure that shit out. We don't need to be there. But anyways, that's just me. Y'all let me know what I got, what I missed. I know it's weird because the comments go crazier on these Trump videos, but the views don't. I just do it because it's trending topic. And to me, this, as I'm getting older and I pay taxes, it's just somewhat interesting to me. So I'd love to hear what you guys think. Other than that, I'm getting out of here.
City boy, city boy.